As a little bit of history, PHL Connected was launched during the pandemic. Some folks, really great folks, came together during the summer very quickly of 2020 to stand up and create PHL Connected, this new program that was going to support families with free internet access so that they could do their remote learning during that first 2020-21 school year, fully remote. And so I want to acknowledge all of the partnerships that went into PHL Connected. Some folks and organizations are represented here today. Thank you for joining. Our internet service providers, Comcast and T-Mobile, the school district, charter schools, independence mission schools, our digital navigator organizations, Cassandra and CMAC represents one of them, and our philanthropic sponsors as well. And then finally, the United Way, who's our coordinating agent for the program. So multi-partnership effort, public and private partners that really came together to stand up this program. And so now, as we're shifting the program, we're really responding to, how the pandemic has shifted, how we're responding to new and additional funding sources and resources that are available, ultimately to sustain this work. We know that just because students are back in the classroom does not mean that digital access is not important to learning. A lot of homework still happens online, family, teacher engagement may be happening online. And so we're really, this shift is really a pivot to support those needs in a different way that is leveraging new and different resources. So at the core of the program will still remain free and low-cost internet promotion and support for families. The biggest shift is that the program itself is no longer or will no longer be sponsoring that internet access, but instead will be supporting families in primarily enrolling in the Affordable Connectivity Program, which we'll talk much more about. And for families who aren't eligible for ACP or for whom ACP is posing a barrier, we will continue to support them with hotspots. This is going to be a very small percentage of folks, however, so we don't anticipate that being the large bulk of support that we're offering, but primarily support through PHL Connected and the Affordable Connectivity Program. Our local education agency partnerships will continue to be, sort of our strong relationship to family communication. As I mentioned, we work with the school district, right now over 60 different charter schools, and the independence mission schools. We will continue to, deepen these partnerships to make sure that we're communicating information and ultimately supporting school-aged households in this program. The 211 hotline has been our entry point for families and will remain that entry point for families moving forward. And so if folks have questions about ACP, if they want to get screened for ACP, they can call the 211 hotline. They can also, this connects to this bottom block here on the slide, they can also schedule appointments with our digital navigators, and Cassandra can talk about that in a moment. But our digital navigators are providing in-person and remote support, not just for ACP, but supporting residents across Philadelphia with device access, with digital skills classes, and other online tasks. So all of these components are making up, the sort of new version of PHL Connected. Now, what's critical for the changes and what families should be aware of is what happens to their service. So I mentioned that PHL Connected previously has been sponsoring internet accounts through Comcast Internet Essentials as well as T-Mobile hotspots. And after July 31st, they will see a change in their service or their billing. The last day of PHL Connected sponsored service is July 31st of this year, so in just a few months. If a family has Internet Essentials after this July 31st date, their account will remain active. They will still have internet service, but the account will transition to self-pay, meaning that they would be receiving bills for $9.95 per month after that. So that will maintain their internet access. They will still have access, but transition to self-pay. If folks have a hotspot, that hotspot will be turned off after July 31st. So unlike households with internet essentials, those with hotspots will have their service turned off. Now, ultimately, ACP can support families with continuing to receive free or low-cost internet, which is why we're here to talk about it and promote it and talk about what it means to make this transition. Very briefly, ACP is a $30, up to $30 monthly subsidy that households can apply to their broadband service, their monthly broadband service. There is also a device discount that I will mention, although there are some challenges to implementation that potentially Cassandra can share, but there is a device component, credit component to ACP that would allow a household to purchase a laptop, desktop, tablet from participating providers if they contribute somewhere between $10 and $50 towards the device. So ACP is ultimately how we, want to continue to support families through this transition, and then after July 31st, support any new families that come to us with need for free or low-cost internet. Now, this is a breakdown of the eligibility criteria, and you'll notice that so many families across Philadelphia are eligible with this criteria. The first one, and the one I want to highlight for our school community here, is that any student who receives free or reduced lunch is eligible for ACP, and any student who attends a community eligibility provision school under the free and reduced lunch program is eligible, and in fact, any student. So that means that all school district of Philadelphia student households are eligible for ACP because all school district schools are designated as CEP schools. That means they meet a certain threshold of their student population participating in free and reduced lunch. So this is tremendous. This is a huge reach, especially for our school household sort of community. And we really want to lift that up and highlight that. I will also say that, we're working with the schools directly to send messaging and communicate this eligibility to households. But for this group here, it's really important that we, really make that clear. Outside of the school-aged households, other households, regardless of if you have a child or not, are eligible for ACP. So if their income is at or below 200% of the poverty line, which I think for a family of four is around 60,000, might be a little bit more than that, they're eligible. Or if they participate in a public benefit program like SNAP, Medicaid, WIC, they're eligible for ACP. If anybody in the household has received a Pell Grant in the last year, they're eligible. Or if they meet the eligibility criteria for a participating provider's existing low-cost program. So, for example, Internet Essentials has eligibility criteria that a household has to meet. If they meet that criteria, then they also are eligible for ACP. So broad eligibility across Philadelphia. And so part of what we're doing at the city is to not only promote ACP for school-aged households for the transition from PHLConnectED, but really promote it broadly because many households across Philadelphia are eligible. I mentioned 211 and want to highlight this here because it is this entry point for families. And so when you call 211, you can learn about ACP and if you're likely eligible. You can identify the key documents you'll need to submit your ACP application. And as I mentioned earlier, you can schedule an appointment with a digital navigator to get started on your ACP application, or if you have other enrollment needs or support, they're available too. I'll say that, previously 211 supported PHLConnectED families. It's really broadened and any household in Philadelphia can call 211 for ACP support, not just school-aged households. So of course, PHLConnectED families can call, but anybody who's interested in ACP can make the call as well. And so what I want to leave you with is some action steps for supporting folks with ACP getting started. We've partnered with Education Superhighway, which is a national nonprofit organization promoting internet access and adoption, especially for school-aged households. We have our eligibility screener that we've co-branded with them, getacp.org/PHL. I can add that in the chat in just a moment. It was created to be a mobile-friendly sort of screener. It is multilingual, translated in Spanish and Chinese, and can walk somebody through the basic questions, qualifying questions for ACP. This is a very quick and easy way for someone to get started, to learn a little bit more about the program. Then families can, of course, dial 211. We want that resource to be really pushed out there broadly. They can, as a reminder, get screened for ACP and schedule an appointment with a digital navigator. So if someone would prefer to be on the phone or does not have any sort of digital access, they can call 211 to get started. And then the other thing I want to share is that, we recognize that this transition means that there's some shifts to how we're supporting and who we can support. ACP is a federal program, whereas PHLConnectED was really built in Philadelphia, and we could sort of create and determine the different criteria, and we controlled how the program operated. We recognize that some of that is a little bit of that is lost with ACP being a federal program. But we want folks to know that there are multiple ways to apply, that though it is a federal program, they do not require a social security number to apply. You do not need to be a citizen to apply and receive the benefit. And so we're cognizant of that, and we have created a communications toolkit that reflects some of those eligibility criteria and ways to demonstrate eligibility. And then in those really small cases or instances where somebody isn't eligible, or again, that application is posing a barrier, we will still support with hotspots as well.